Oh, honey, gather round, because the tea is boiling, and it's all about Rachel's Zegler. Yes, that Rachel Zegler, the one Hollywood keeps trying to shove down our throats like cold leftovers. But baby, it's not working. Because just when we thought things couldn't get more humiliating after her Snow White debacle, her latest stunt in London has flopped even harder. And we're talking full-on theatrical train wreck. Let's rewind. So apparently, Snow White, Disney's billion-dollar feminist reboot that nobody really asked for, finally managed to cross the $200 million 0 cents mark globally. And guess what? That's being generous. Like, embarrassingly generous. Depending on where you look, the film sits at $195,200,000 0 cents, but Box Office Mojo has it at $200,210,000 0 cents. So yeah, let's be real nice and pretend it actually hit the big 209.0. But come on. Even if we play fairy godmother and bless it with that figure, this film is a disaster. Financially, critically, and publicly, it's a mess that even Cinderella's mice couldn't clean up. First off, the budget. Most estimates say the production alone cost around $260 0 cents to $269 million 0 cents. But let's not forget about those little reshoots. Add those in, and we're knocking on the door of $300 million 0 cents. And let's not even get started on the marketing. They probably dropped another 100 mil on that too. So let's do the math. $300 million 0 cents spent, maybe $200 million 0 cents earned, and only half of that goes back to Disney after the theaters take their cut? Baby, that's a $200 million 0 cents loss. Ouch. But here's the real kicker. They bet all that money on Rachel Zegler. Sweetheart, she's talented, no doubt. But let's be honest. Before West Side Story, she was a virtual unknown. Hollywood saw her, crowned her their next princess, and just assumed the rest of us would follow. Spoiler alert, we didn't. And don't even try to defend Snow White by pointing at that 72% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. That score is from the tiny crowd that actually saw it. Plus, Rotten Tomatoes recently updated how they calculate audience scores, which, let's be real, means inflated. Because the critic score, 37%? Yep, that's not just bad. It's tragic. And let's get one thing clear. Snow White didn't flop because of Rachel Zegler alone. The script? An unwatchable mess. The direction, all over the place. The soul of the original film, completely erased. But this brings us to the latest disaster, her new stage role in Evita at London's iconic Palladium Theatre. And oh boy, brace yourself. Zegler was cast as Eva Peron, a role dripping in prestige. This should have been a comeback moment. Posters and ads plastered all over London screaming Golden Globe winner Rachel Zegler, with her Snow White and Hunger Games roles front and center. It's a major production at a major venue. But guess what? Nobody's showing up. Not kidding. The seating chart for Evita looks like a ghost town. The website's little traffic light system, green across the board. Every seat for every show is available. You could walk in last minute and sit anywhere you want. Front row, balcony, take your pick. The theater is empty. The ticket website uses a traffic light system to indicate availability, and it's all green, wide open, nobody's buying tickets. It's bad, like career-threatening bad. Because if Zegler was truly the next big thing, why can't she even fill a row in London's most historic venue? Just to rub salt in the wound, other shows like John Lithgow's are running at the same time and are selling just fine. People still love the theater. They just don't want to see Rachel Zegler headline it. For comparison, I looked at other theater productions running concurrently, like John Lithgow's show, which has much more limited availability. So what's happening? It's simple. Hollywood is out of touch. They keep trying to manufacture stars without checking if anyone actually likes them. They keep telling us she's the next Julia Roberts, but we're not buying it. Literally. Look, even West Side Story, which had Spielberg directing and major Oscar buzz, flopped. Yes, it dropped during the pandemic, and musicals are always a gamble, but it didn't pull audiences. And after that, Disney still handed her the keys to the kingdom and cast her as Snow White? Really? Spielberg's remake arrived during a pandemic when theater attendance was still recovering and musicals have been struggling at the box office for years. It's like they're living in an echo chamber. A bunch of executives convincing each other that Rachel is it, even though audiences are screaming no. Remember Shailene Woodley or Sam Worthington? Same story, constantly cast in blockbuster after blockbuster, but never quite connected. Hollywood's been down this road before, and here we are again. The wildest part? Zegler didn't help herself with those pre-release interviews. Remember when she shaded the original Snow White, calling the prince stalkerish and promising a more feminist update? Yeah, that backfired big time. In multiple interviews, she made statements that seemed dismissive of the original animated classic, describing the prince as stalkerish and suggesting the remake would correct the outdated elements of the 1937 film. You don't bash a beloved classic and expect fans to line up. Fans felt disrespected, like she was trying to erase what they loved. And once that trust is broken, it's game over, darling. And while critics might say stage acting is different, let's be honest. Real stars sell tickets across all mediums. Hugh Jackman can headline a musical, a Marvel movie, or a shampoo ad, and people will show up. Rachel Zegler? Not so much. Established stars with genuine drawing power don't face empty theaters, but Hollywood's still pretending like none of this is happening. They keep parading her around as a Golden Globe winner, like that one award erases the mountains of evidence that the public is not on board. Articles still refer to her as a Golden Globe winner for Best Actress in a Comedy/Musical for West Side Story, as if that single award outweighs multiple box office disappointment. Now let's talk Hunger Games, the prequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. It did okay, around $330 million 0 cents worldwide on a $100 million 0 cents budget. But let's be real, it wasn't because of Rachel. That was the franchise doing the heavy lifting. The name Hunger Games sold the tickets, not hers. Zegler wasn't the primary draw. The Hunger Games brand was doing the heavy lifting. And guess what Disney's doing now? Still trying to push Snow White into China in hopes it magically saves their losses. But honey, China's not a charity. They pick and choose Western films carefully now, and Snow White doesn't exactly scream global appeal. They're clearly hoping for a miracle to mitigate their losses. But the Chinese box office has become increasingly selective. This isn't just about Zegler anymore. This is about how broken the Hollywood star-making machine has become. They don't want stars to rise. They want to build them like Frankenstein's monster and hope lightning strikes. This accelerated star-making process isn't just risky for studios, it potentially harms the actors themselves. And it's not fair to Rachel either. She might actually be talented, but the industry threw her into the deep end with $300 million 0 cents projects before she could even build a fan base. And when those projects flop, guess who gets blamed? Not the studio, not the writers, her. The smart move now? Step back, take a breather. Stop headlining massive flops and start showing up in indie films. Smaller roles, critical darlings. That's how you build respect and a real fan base. Florence Pugh did it. Timothy Chalamet did it. Zendaya, same. They allowed their audience to grow naturally rather than being immediately positioned as the centerpiece of 300 million gambles. Hollywood's refusal to admit when they're wrong is what's killing careers, and you can already feel them distancing themselves from Zegler. Not loudly, but slowly, quietly, behind the scenes, because sweetheart, the box office never lies. Studios simply can't afford to ignore the financial realities indefinitely. So here we are. Evita flopping, Snow White flopping, Zegler standing on a massive stage with no one in the seats. It's not a fairy tale, it's a cautionary tale. A cold, brutal reminder that you can't force fame. And at this point, all we can do is watch the final act unfold. So let's break this down clearly, shall we? Rachel Zegler isn't necessarily untalented. That's not the argument here. She can sing, she can act, she clearly has passion. But what she doesn't have, at least not yet, is pull. The kind of magnetism that makes people buy a $150 0 cents ticket just to see you. The kind that makes a movie feel like an event just because your name is on the poster. She's missing that secret ingredient, and Hollywood refuses to accept it. She's technically proficient and clearly has some talent. The issue is that studios have thrust her into these massive, expensive productions without allowing her to gradually build an audience. It's like they skipped every single step in the star-making process. No slow rise, no building buzz over time, no letting her earn her way up the ladder. Instead, they just said, "You're a star now," and hoped the rest of the world would follow like sheep. But baby, this ain't 2002. The audience today doesn't care what studio executives say. We've got choices, endless content, streaming wars, YouTube, TikTok, Netflix originals with breakout nobodies. If people don't feel a connection, they'll scroll right past you. No award or marketing campaign is gonna change that. Today's audiences have endless options and aren't easily convinced to support a performer simply because the industry has deemed them worthy of stardom. Now let's talk about the irony here. Zegler's entire Hollywood rise feels like a case study in studio delusion, like a bunch of execs locked in a gold-plated boardroom, nodding along to their own echo chamber while the public is screaming, "We're not into it." Painful to watch, really, because while Rachel is out here grinding, taking on roles, doing press, showing up, the machine behind her is setting her up to fail. Had they let her breathe, let her build, she could have had a much different path. Start with charming indie roles, build credibility, win people over slowly. Instead, she's now the face of 2 flops before the age of 24. That's a weight nobody should have to carry. Zegler hasn't had this opportunity. She's been immediately thrust into enormous productions. And that weight, it sticks. Fair or not, the label of box office poison lingers. It's cruel, but it's true. Hollywood is quick to crown, but even quicker to cast aside. And if those Palladium ticket sales are any clue, the tide is turning and fast. Let's look at those numbers again. Snow White lost close to $200 million, 0 cents. Evita can't even get a row of seats filled. And The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, her so-called comeback, only did well because of the Hunger Games legacy. She wasn't the draw, the franchise was. If I were a Hollywood executive looking at these numbers objectively, I'd be extremely hesitant to cast her as the lead in another big budget production. So now the question is, what's next? Will studios finally pull back? Will they stop this ridiculous campaign to force Rachel Zegler into superstardom and let her grow like any other actor? Or will they continue to toss her into $200 million, 0 cents projects, hoping this time it'll magically work? Spoiler, it won't. What Rachel really needs is a reset. A chance to step out of the spotlight, take roles that challenge her in smaller films, support an ensemble cast instead of carrying it, work with respected indie directors, show range, win back the critics who once rooted for her, and most importantly, win over the audience. Because if we're being real, Rachel's problem isn't hate, it's indifference. And in this industry, that's worse. The audience isn't canceling her, they're just not interested. And without interest, there's no buzz, no momentum, no future bookings. Experience like To the Lighthouse. The star power builds organically through a combination of strong performances, smart project choices, and authentic audience connection. And that's what's so heartbreaking about all this. She could have been something. Maybe she still can, but only if someone pulls the brakes on this Hollywood hype machine before it crushes her completely. You can almost feel the shift happening already. Studios are starting to realize that force-feeding us their chosen ones doesn't work anymore. The audience decides now. And the audience, they want authenticity. They want talent and connection. They want to see someone earn their place, not just be handed it. Rachel's reps should be getting her into A24 movies, buzzy Sundance debuts, gritty Netflix dramas, not another overhyped Disney remake. She needs to disappear from the blockbuster circuit for a while so people can rediscover her on their own. That's how you rebuild. But will Hollywood let her? Or are they too deep in the Rachel Zegler fantasy to admit they made a mistake? Hollywood has a notorious difficulty admitting when its star-making machinery has misfired. Probably the latter. They'll ride this train off a cliff before someone in a suit raises the hand and says, maybe this wasn't the move. And here is the most painful truth. This entire saga says more about Hollywood's delusions than it does about Rachel Zegler. It's not just a career misstep. It's a symptom of a much bigger illness. Studios have stopped listening to critics, to data, to audiences. They're making stars in a lab and then wondering why the public doesn't care. The Snow White saga ultimately reveals much more about Hollywood's dysfunctional decision-making processes than it does about any individual performer. Rachel's story is turning into a cautionary tale, a warning sign for every young actor who gets hyped too fast too soon. And honestly, that's tragic. Because the girl can sing, she can act, she just needed time. But Hollywood doesn't give you time, they give you a throne. And if the kingdom doesn't love you instantly, they burn it down with you in it. Let's not forget, stardom is fragile. One bad press tour, one flop, one poor tweet, and suddenly the dream turns into a PR disaster. Rachel Zegler might survive this. She might even bounce back stronger. But only if the system stops setting her up to fail. And that might be too much to hope for. So here we are. An empty theater in London. A $200 million 0 cents Disney mess. And a young actress at the center of it all, wondering how the dream became a nightmare. She could have been Hollywood's next sweetheart. But she's the girl whose name gets whispered in boardrooms as a lesson learned, and that, darlings, is the cruelest plot twist of them all.